Hi, everybody. Uh, Let me invite you to take your seats, join us. Okay, everybody settled? Good. Hi, welcome, and it's really nice to see you all, both familiar faces and new faces. And it's particularly good to welcome you to this part of the Men Having Babies conference program, the Advocacy Research Forum, which is one of the most important parts of our conferences. I am Dr. Sylvia Schneider-Fox. I am a clinical psychologist from Chicago, United States. I am a board member for Men Having Babies, and I am the liaison to the research community. You probably all know by now that Men Having Babies is an organization that is dedicated to providing education and practical resources for prospective parents who are gay, queer, bisexual, or trans. But what you might not know, and it is just as important, is that our mission is broader than that. We are very much committed to supporting research on surrogacy. Its emotional, developmental, social aspects. And if you go to our website, you will be able to see that over time we have collected quite an extensive library of existing research on the topic of surrogacy. Later tonight in today's program, you're going to hear from Dr. Alan Campbell, our Advocacy and Research Associate, about the research that is being done and has been done in Europe to the day. We are also fierce supporters of ethical surrogacy. And ethical surrogacy is the surrogacy that is committed to minimizing risk and maximizing benefits for everybody who participates in the process. Surrogates, parents, kids. You're going to hear more about what ethical surrogacy is and how we have come to define it tomorrow afternoon, at the panel that I very strongly encourage you to attend, a look at mindful surrogacy. The last part of our mission that I want to emphasize today is that we are also very much committed to supporting advocacy, really trying to promote acceptance, legislation that ensures that every prospective parent who wants access to legal, affordable, ethical surrogacy in any country can do so. And this is the part that we are going to start our program with tonight. We will put the focus on the efforts to advocate for legal, ethical, accessible surrogacy for all in different countries in Europe. So to that end, I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves. And once they do, I will cede the mic to Ron Paul Dayan, our executive director, who will take it from there. But let's start by meeting you all, guys.
Okay, thank you for inviting me. Nice to meet you all. I'm a Frenchman involved in a surrogacy journey. I'm not yet a father, but we are involved in a surrogacy journey in the United States with a surrogate in the Wisconsin. I'm here to represent the APGL. APGL is the French Association for Gay and Lesbian Parents, but I'm also HR director in a global company named Accor. It's a global hotel company. And as we are talking about alliances, I wanted to highlight that the Human Resources Network could be a good support for the surrogacy journey.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Pierre. I'm from Belgium, from here. I'm here to represent Homoparentalité, which is an association for gay and lesbian parents. We help people to become parents, and we also have some activities for the children and so on. I'm a father. I have a son born in 2019, sorry. So he's almost 3, and yeah, I just here to give my impression.
Yeah, good afternoon from my side, Jens Landwehr. My husband and I, we have 2 children through surrogacy. They're already, one of them is already a teenager, so everything changes, of course. You know, that age, my daughter is 14, my son is 8. He's here with me. He's upstairs in the room, so I may be distracted at some point. I'm representing an association that in Germany that a number of parents, gay parents, founded. And we basically, our goal is to legalize surrogacy in Germany. We are not only representing gay parents now, we are representing everybody in Germany who would like to be, you know, who want to be children, want to have children and want to be parents in Germany. And yeah, actually we'll talk about this probably later on, that there's a lot of dynamic in Germany right now. There's even a political statement on this topic that basically foresees legalization, but we'll talk about that later.
Hi, great for having me, thank you. I am Sjors, and together with my husband, we have a son from 4 years old. Ton is his name, and in December we expect our second child, thanks to another domestic surrogate, so that's very special. I am today representing the foundation Meer dan Gewenst, or translated More Than Wished For, and it is the Dutch Rainbow Family Foundation. So we look forward to education and also sending information, but also in political parties we are active to change the law in the better way to protect everyone who participate in surrogacy, and also other family forms, but now I'm here for surrogacy. Professionally, I'm a medical social worker for a fertility center, and I also have my own private practice in surrogacy. And we read a book, and a children's book, to explain to our son, but also to children from surrogacy, how it works, and also to create some understanding about how that works and how the family works, and actually create its own story. And we do a lot more, but that's not very, I think we're coming there in this conversation, what I do next to this. Yeah, so that's me.
Welcome to all of you. It will be really interesting and exciting to hear what you all have to say. Alan, you are going to represent the second part of the conversation that focuses more on research, but maybe this is a good time for you to introduce yourself as well. I'll let you stand here.
Sure. So again, my name is Dr. Alan Campbell. I am the Advocacy and Research Associate with Men Having Babies, and I am going to be charged with working on our advocacy agenda, as well as supporting the various research efforts that are happening worldwide, and especially here in Europe, about learning more about surrogacy as a means to family building, and the longitudinal and otherwise studies that can be done to support just the base of knowledge that we need to ensure that we're doing this in an ethical and sustainable way. And so we'll be talking a little bit more later on at the end of this conversation about the current research that's taking place here, specifically in Europe, and the impact of that research on what we do and how we move forward in surrogacy journeys. And I will turn it over to our Executive Director, Ron Dayan.
So welcome everybody. We're going to have another round of welcomes and thank yous tomorrow, but let me just say that we're kind of, starting not from the most trivial point here, in the sense that many of you are here trying to first figure out whether you want to become parents through surrogacy, and then, if so, learn as much from our common wisdom and experience as parents and surrogates and other peers, as well as from experts, how to become children from surrogacy with the help of surrogacy if you indeed if you did reach the conclusion that that's your chosen path. However, today, as Sylvia and the other people already alluded to, we're pausing first to not talk about how you become a parent, but examine surrogacy parenting. And in this case, given that we have discussions every year, we're kind of picking up on a conversation we started last year, but I'll catch you up on it. And last year we dedicated this evening, and it's on video on our website, about, first of all, why do we feel confident that surrogacy can be practiced ethically, and if so, under what conditions? So we're kind of skipping this today, and as Sylvia mentioned, we will be addressing some of those issues at the Mindful Look at Surrogacy panel tomorrow. But today what we want to do is, given that we know that at least the associations up here have a consensus about the fact that as a family formation path, this is one of the only ones sometimes we have at our possession as gay men, singles, and couples, and that B, that it can be done ethically. But then we have a lot of challenges. And the first challenge is that even though we have spent a lot of time thinking about how surrogacy can be done ethically, surrogacy as a whole is a very problematic topic. Why? It's fascinating to a lot of people. It sounds like something that has to do with sex. It sounds like something that is juicy and provocative and sensational. And whenever there's something that happens around the world regarding surrogacy, everybody likes to report about it. Surrogacy, in many societies, countries, instances, has a bad reputation. Because as fascinating and as interesting it is a topic for a lot of people, it is one of the topics that touches the fewest people in the world. If you really compare the number of people who are interested in reading a juicy article about surrogacy compared to the number of people that ever had any first-hand knowledge of somebody that was a surrogate or is a surrogacy parent or is a child born through surrogacy, let alone that they themselves are one of those categories, they're very, 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 very few people. So there's this imbalance between a lot of things that are very niche topics are usually also not of interest for everybody else. But surrogacy is a niche topic, but everybody loves to talk about it. And when they do, it's very superficial. And that is the challenge we face. Just recently, the European Parliament passed a resolution that I bet you 95% of the European Parliament members don't know about the status of women in Ukraine, in the context of the war. And in it was a blatant condemnation of surrogacy. Surrogacy is bad, 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 bad. There were like a sentence or two written just how about without any conditions. A few sentences later, there was another sentence saying that there should be more research about surrogacy so we know more about it. Duh. If you acknowledge you don't know a lot about surrogacy, maybe qualify a little bit that sentence that was written before. And why was it in the context of surrogacy, the report about Ukraine? Because it was about the status of women. So that they claim that surrogacy, as it affected women in Ukraine, creates a very bad gender role precedent and creates a very bad situation. They weren't talking about the specific surrogates that have been affected this or that way. A very blanket statement. Now, as I said, it happens often. On the one hand, how many people read it? Anybody here heard about it? Probably not. Which is, in this particular case, we decided not to issue some sort of position or clarification about it. But it happens a lot because it's one of those juicy, politically correct opportunities for people to show how caring and wonderful they are. They're against exploitation of this, exploitation of that. They're the heroes. And they take a topic they know nothing about. And as I mentioned, last year we talked in length about some of the opportunities we had to present to members, groups in the European Union, from Greens to Renew Europe and even the conservative Christians, etc. And today we want to talk about why it matters. Why acceptance of surrogacy as a family building option matters. It matters because of course, you first and foremost have to feel that you're educated and that you feel that this is something that you can look at your children's eyes and say, hey, I'm proud of not just who you are, but how we formed our family. But it's also important because a slew of day-to-day practical challenges. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So when we, parents through surrogacy, are encountering instances where surrogacy is being criticized or being, ridiculed or even, condemned very vehemently, we have, other than the discomfort, there are consequences. And those consequences could be legal. There could be consequences that start at the LGBT community, the level of acceptance we have there, to us as, respectable and fully accepted members of the rainbow family associations or rainbow family events and the political movement. There are legislative initiatives, and there are media and popular, as I mentioned, coverage of that reflects into stigma and into how we move around our communities, schools, or whatever, and the baggage that might be included in that. So what we're going to do today is, given that this is not something that is equally manifested across Europe, and certainly a very different story in the United States and other places, the first thing we want to do is go around and ask from the panelists to talk about when they find that family acceptance or the acceptance of family formation through surrogacy is a challenge in their countries, how does that affect their current agendas? How are members of their associations affected by this in the particular countries? We want to hear about the dynamics. Are certain things getting better? Certain things, sometimes under certain conditions, maybe a political, configuration of this or that sort. What is the dynamic? Are things getting better or not? What is the dynamics within their LGBT communities? We might find some, places where things are more concerning. Some places could give us some hope. That and then of course, if there are some legislative or administrative and other positions and conditions they're trying to pass or challenge. So the first round, we're not going to talk about what we do about it, how we're dealing with this, but more what is the agenda? Why does it matter in France, in Belgium, in Germany, and in the Netherlands? Why does it matter that not everybody accepts family formation through surrogacy, and what are the dynamics around it? So that's the first round. And we'll start with Florent about France too, and we'll just go down there.
Yeah. Okay. As most of people know that in France we are far from the acceptance of the surrogacy. It remains a complicated topic at political level, and we saw that also during the last presidential election, where this topic was not at all in the program of each candidate. Even if some of them wanted to put the topics, finally nobody present the topics in their program. Even if we saw in the French population in last some survey that more than 50% in the French population could be open to the surrogacy. But finally, we don't have any moves at political level or administration level. And even when we are back with your baby in France regarding the process, when you come back in France, it remains a complicated and random process for different topics. If you want to obtain the passport for your baby, even if at the end you will obtain at each time and at the end all the documents, your ID, your passport, etc. It remains a complicated process to deal with. So we don't have a clear agenda or positive agenda for the acceptance of the surrogacy process in France. That's why, and we will see that in the second question regarding what could be our supporter or actor to try to influence the administration or the politician. That's the situation in France today.
Yes, here in Belgium, that's not that complicated actually, because you have no law about it, about the surrogacy beyond borders. We know it depends actually on the people at the city you will meet. If they are used to this, for example, here in Brussels, they are more used to surrogacy in America. Or if you live a little bit further in the country, it's more about to be clear and crystal clear with the city, with the people you meet, to register the baby and to explain the process, the surrogacy. But I mean, we don't have that many troubles about surrogacy. You can obtain the paper of your child easily. If, first of all, one of the two father will register the baby, and then the other one will have to make an adoption of this baby. That's the deal for 10 or 20 years ago, but today we see a lot of cities, mainly in Brussels, accept a birth certificate where there are two fathers on it, and so the second father doesn't have to adopt the baby. But the things are going very slow, but every case becomes fine at the end. And we know a lot of people that had troubles, but finally they had everything fine for them. So yeah, I mean, here in Belgium, surrogacy, and that's the legal part, but also with people you speak in your family, your friends, and everybody. We don't have a lot of, actually we have acceptance for that. My son, I told you, is 3 years old today. We don't live in Brussels, we live in a small city around Brussels, and we never had any bad things about the surrogacy and the process we did through.
Yeah, and in Germany, we actually have a lot of dynamic around the topic. Just about a year ago, shortly after this conference, last year we had a government election, so a change of government. As you may know, Angela Merkel, she left her position, and then shortly after that was an election. A new government came in. It's a coalition government, and one of the three parties of this coalition, they actually they have a reputation for being liberal. I mean, it's the Free Democrats, and they explicitly had it in their political agenda for about 2 years. And last year they brought this into the coalition paper. Actually, this is probably one of the points where they had to make a compromise. They had to take something else that they wanted to be in this coalition paper. They had to take it out, but they managed in the end to get this topic, the surrogacy topic, in the coalition paper. And what it says there is that they will implement a commission to evaluate basically surrogacy and options for surrogacy in Germany. So since that time, that was about a year ago, so that was September 2021. Since that time, there is actually a lot of dynamic. We see media coverage almost every week on the state television, basically, also on one of the major newspapers. You find an article about the topic. And yeah, so the reason is basically that everybody is now trying to get ready for this, for when this topic is being discussed in more depth. You can also see kind of the relationship between the government agenda and the state media, basically. They have to report, when something is happening in the government, and they're trying to get ready now for this, for when this topic is really being moved forward. And that's why you see those, you see the program, the programs, you see documentations and so forth. I mean, we had this before. We had this already for about, I would say, 10 years or so. But as I mentioned, my daughter is 14 now, and she was one of the first, or we are actually one of the first gay parents in Germany with children, and made our story public from the beginning. So there was some coverage, but it really changed over the last year. And so you really feel that that everybody is anxious to cover the topic, and also not only the television channels, but also the large publications. They put people on the topic basically, so that they build up the knowledge. So when this is becoming like a topic that everybody talks about, that they're actually knowledgeable, and that they can further report on it. So this is all a good sign. I mean, this is now the upside of the story. The downside is that nothing really happened in this 1 year. So they stated in the coalition paper that they would implement a commission, and that our association, the association that I'm representing, VfLND, that our association is supposed to be in this commission, but there's no invitation yet. So I mean, we're sending emails, asking them when is it going to start and so forth. Nothing has happened yet. So the reason we are assuming is that this is being dealt with by the health ministry, and the health minister is basically has been dealing with corona issues over the last year. And then, of course, now what's a downside is the economic situation, the inflation situation, the war, of course, in the Ukraine and so forth. So this all led to a further delay, but we are pretty much hopeful that eventually in this 4-year government period, this is going to happen. In the meantime, what are we doing? We are trying to push from our end, Okay. So anyway, it's good. It made a change, and we are hopeful. I mean, maybe one last aspect. They're always talking about legalization in Germany, because obviously now the embryo, the donation laws and all of that are making surrogacy impossible in Germany right now for various reasons. It's slightly different in Holland. But in Germany, it's illegal. What we are already saying, and we are increasingly saying in this process now over the last year, so we're using this year, talking about our stories and saying, yes, it may be that the laws in Germany are like that, but still surrogacy is a reality in Germany, and there's thousands, I mean, we don't know the numbers, but there's thousands of surrogacy-born children already in Germany, and they're all completely legal. I mean, me and my husband, we are the legal parents of our children, obviously, and so we've used this year to be more, even more outright about our story. I mean, we have been telling the story all along. That's another reason why I'm here, because we made our story basically public already from the beginning on and talked about it. But yeah, we used this year to be even more explicit about it.
Thank you. Great progress.
Thank you.
So the situation in the Netherlands. let me step into my time machine, because in 2016 the state advised to create a committee, a state committee, with 10 experts based on surrogacy and also multi-parenthood or polyparenthood, to research what was needed in the law. So the state committee was there, and in 2016, in December, they presented actually a beautiful report with 86 points that were one-on-one could be taken over into legislation, but we're still waiting. So there are things happening in the meanwhile. We have a rainbow agreement program that we have from the rainbow side of the Netherlands, and the last formation of our government, they signed that they were going to implement all the points of the state committee advice, but they didn't. And now we have a new coalition agreement with a new political parties, and they also signed, but it was subject of the agreement formation. So we have good hope that there is going to be eventually going to be law and progress in creating the law, because now people aren't protected well. So it takes some time before the child is actually the legal child of the parents. And to protect those childs, that they have rights, to have the rights and the legal protection of their parents, it is case that it's going to be a law. So on the legal part, that's one thing. We also have, I think so too, we see it a lot more in the media. So on the soaps, in the newspapers, in magazines, we see a lot more different family forms, and especially surrogacy. And I think that is a good sign that we are here, and we're not we are part of a normalizing process to create that it is a very much normal family form, instead of 20 or 30 years ago that when it was far more exotic or sexy or spicy. So we are normalizing it slowly, and I think that's a positive reaction and a positive situation on the image people have about surrogacy. So that is, I think, the way the people look at it, and of course you have opponents and people who are against it. But also a new development in the Netherlands is that it is made possible in the regulation of how we treat people with embryo donation or sperm donation or egg cell donation, that it is possible since 2018 for 2 males to be treated in fertility clinics in the Netherlands. So I work at a fertility clinic where they were the first center who started IVF, so gestational surrogacy, in our clinic, and last year the second clinic started by doing those procedures. So I think that is a leap forward, and it also has effect, thank you, has effect on legislation and the law. There's a lot more to talk about, but it's...
We'll do another one in a minute. Let me just first mention, just to adjust expectations. On Sunday, we will have several rooms, those of you who've already looked at the program, where we will have an in-depth look with most of the people that are on the panel about how things are done in each country. So we're not expecting right now to cover everything about how and what are the steps to establish parenthood and what's possible, what's not possible in each one of those countries. And some of the legislative initiatives we're talking about here also have some immediate implications that will be addressed at the country-specific forums. Let me move and start another round, so you'll all be asked to speak again. But first let me mention that you're all, if you proceed and have children, you're all going to be activists yourselves, because this is what you've just heard from everybody here. Because the reality is that as opposed to people who, which are still the majority, who are using the help of a surrogate to become parents, and our conventional heterosexual families, we are very visible. So we're not talking about gay parenting here. We're not talking about acceptance of us as gay parents. We're talking about acceptance of the way we formed our families. But we tend to be the most visible ambassadors or most visible people that are, often the topic of conversation, because we can't just pretend that we had the child in a conventional biological way. So, but what we want to talk about today is beyond that. And I didn't introduce myself. My husband and I have children who are 21 years old from surrogacy. So I think probably thousands of people have been exposed to our family, and we've just, I'm not even talking about my activity in this organization, just day to day, and school, etc. And that already normalizes things. But you just gave different perspectives about where you stand, or different, a report of a snapshot where you stand. I don't know, I have a feeling that this year, Pierre, tell me if I'm wrong, we might not have a demonstration here. That'll be the first year since you arrived. Have you heard anything about a demonstration being organized against us? In all of our previous conferences, there was usually a group here that demonstrated. Maybe they'll come tomorrow, maybe they gave up. So there's this aspect of, people just by us persevering and moving forward, already things are changing. But talk to me about beyond your initial, your personal exposure, what what's your agenda, or what are the ways in which you are able to, in a more, conscious way, to try to improve how people see surrogacy in your countries? Starting with the LGBT community. It used to be a thing that homoparentalité was against surrogacy, APGL was against surrogacy at some point. Your actual organizations used to have different positions years ago. But what is also then, what are the alliances? What are the tools? What are the governmental initiatives that you are all either initiating or taking advantage of in order to advance the acceptance of surrogacy, given all the challenges you mentioned before? So once again, we'll start with Laurent and France and go down the panel.
Well, despite all the remaining difficulties people are faced regarding their surrogacy process, obviously and happily, we are seeing some new or some actors who are helping APGL or the couples to fight, to influence strongly the administration or the politics. First, we discussed with the right defensor in France. And for example, regarding the paternity leave, it requests to the French Social Security to give the paternity leave, to the both father, and before it was only for one father, and today we have the ability or the benefits to have the paternity leave, for the two parents, two father, and we also trying to create a commission. Because we think that companies are also a good actor, facilitator, or sponsor to obtain and to obtain more right. For example, I am HR director at Accor, and we fight with our unions to put in place new childcare welcome leaves. And today, our employees, especially the LGBTQI+ parents, have more than 10 weeks when they have their baby. So we think, and we are trying to create a commission with the human resources director within the companies to influence, because we think if many companies do that, we could influence easily the legislator and the law. And we realize that in France, most of the company filial of the US company already have benefits like that, and it's not the case from the French company. So we are trying to deal with the human resources director. So as parents, you could also push in your company. If you work for a company, you can push toward the unions and the human resources director in your company, because you can obtain more financial support or leaves. We think also that the company are faced with diversity and inclusion policy. This is a challenge for the company. So I think it could be a good sponsor for them in the surrogacy acceptance. That's for France.
Sorry. As I mentioned here in Belgium, surrogacy is not that, doesn't have a bad image. Mainly we try for homoparentalité. We are a small association. There are, I think, between 5 and 10 associations for gay parents, gay and lesbian parents in Belgium, in the north, in the south, and everywhere in Belgium. But we try to make alliances with the cities, as I mentioned, because sometimes we hear for a couple that they have troubles to register the children at the city, and so they call us to say, how can I do? And so we help the municipality, the city, to tell them how to proceed, because it's mainly administrative things. And we have some people here, mainly in Brussels, that can help everywhere in Belgium, the cities to what you do is not forbidden. You can do this, and you can just go proceed in the form. I don't know, I'm not working for municipality, but that's what we try to do, and the alliances we try to have. I told you, you have to be clear from the beginning, because a lot of people have phantasma about surrogacy, and they don't know it can be ethical in United States, in America. So if you explain the things correctly at the people, at the municipality, as I told you, things are proceeding easily. So sometimes new parents cannot handle with this, and they don't know what to do. So we try to help them with the city, and also to have some alliances with all the other associations here in Belgium. But we don't have that many problems. So we just try to how to say that, to help people to go through the administrative things, mainly.
Yeah, I would say we're trying to get smarter in our activism. It used to be, as I said earlier, we just told our stories as gay parents. We told our story how how it happened that we had our children. I mean, the people that are open to talk about it, they give interviews, or maybe even do a TV documentary or things like that. But or me personally also, I did this without thinking what's actually the effect. So it's now that we are entering this new phase of activism that we are trying to become a lot smarter. So as I said, we're working closely with this party who put this legal legislation draft out. We're working closely with them, and actually we're working very well with them. They need us, we feel, and we need them, obviously. So it's a good situation. We're also trying to work with the media. We continue to work with the media. We give interviews. We're trying to influence the way they talk about the topic, because often, as Ron said, they are not very informed. Even the journalists who work on the topics, they're not very experienced with the topic. So we're trying to educate them, put them in contact with knowledgeable people. We also work a lot with different faculties, university faculties. who are actually also getting ready in Germany on the topic. It's the same situation, because this is, they read the coalition contract and that they see that there's this topic in the contract, and suddenly researchers get on the topic because this is where the potential grants could go to. So this is all a complicated system, and so they reach out to us, but we're also reaching out to them. So it's both legal, but also social and psychological faculties that are interested in the topic. So we are trying to coalesce with them. Meanwhile, we continue our bread and butter work, and that's working with intended parents, or advise intended parents, and also now parents with children. And let me say one more thing. I think it's very important that we differentiate between this gay parenting topic and the surrogacy topic. We are actually trying to attract specifically to our association heterosexual couple, because by far they outnumber, obviously, the demand for surrogacy. It's correct. The gay couples, they are the more outspoken ones. We are the ones sitting in TV, TV documentaries, and we talk about it. We write books about it. A heterosexual couple, the woman would never want to talk about it, obviously. Very few want. It's slowly progressing, and we have actually members. They recently raised their hand, and they do want to talk about it. So this is maybe, let me close with this. We're trying to bring all these voices together, and particularly with a focus on heterosexual couples, talking about it, and bringing the voices together, and continuing to make it visible, basically, but with a focus again on hetero couples, because we think this is how we strategically can promote the topic better. And then obviously with the anti-discrimination legislation, obviously then gay parents will have the same rights, but we think that we need to start with heterosexual couples and make it possible for them in Germany.
Yeah, I think so too, that it helps on different levels to be active on this subject, because what we're doing as Meer dan Gewenst is, More Than Wished For, is being active on multiple levels. So we sit around the table with members of the parliament to talk about the new legislation, and the more we do that, the more we see that we are also invited as experts in this field. And I think that is the great place to be. Being invited, and we also have allies or coalitions with multiple other parties. Like if you talk about the legal side, we coalesce a lot with a foundation called DURF, Dutch Rainbow Family Professionals. That's multiple specialized family lawyers and notaries and specialists based on different family forms. So that really helps, taking experts with you. Sitting on the table with political parties. Also, if you look to scientific research, there's going to be a very large research from Dr. Henny Bas, and she's going to research 8 years on counseling at surrogacy to help the new families flourish. So that's a great thing to know more about surrogacy, to have numbers, and with those numbers you can sit in the political lobby with more information, with more numbers, so more chances to win the lobbies and the debates. So I think that's a great way to do that. And also, for example, our minister, he sent a letter to the government saying that domestical surrogacy with egg cell donation for a man and female relation, so traditional heterosexual relation, should be covered by our national health insurance. But we, together with 10 other parties, wrote a letter to the minister that we're excluded as man couples or man-female couples or transgender couples or everything other than the traditional family forms. So I think that's also a very good example to have a coalition with multiple parents, of multiple allies. And also, last year, our government initiated an information point, and it's called Information Point Surrogacy, actually translated, with also 6 experts or 6 foundations who have the expertise on surrogacy to create one platform with all the information that is valid for intended parents, for surrogates, for egg cell donors, and especially, of course, for the children, but also everyone who is interested and wants to know the actual right information. And I think that is coming from the government, and I think that's a very positive sign. And also a very positive sign that we have a coalition of 6 parties to fill that information and to create resilience, actually, based on this topic. One more example of a coalition is we're working together. We try to work together with another foundation that has started just before the pandemic, and it's called Zwanger voor een ander, translated Pregnant for Another, and they are very focused on surrogacy, both domestic and international, but I think most of that domestic for LGBT families, but also for the heterosexual families. And I think that's a very great initiative. And I think Pauline is going to say something about it in a couple of minutes.
Why don't we have Pauline here, which has been to, I think that's your 3rd conference already. And we've been very, very happy to see your organization formed, and by now we met several of you and even advocated side by side with you. So why don't you, if you have a minute, why don't you come? We're running a little late, but if you can just give an example of how sometimes, given what the panelists were saying, that it's a bit of a tricky situation. Sometimes it works for a benefit to tie LGBT equality and surrogacy because people feel embarrassed to be against us as gay men. But sometimes it's complex, and we need to say we're not the only ones who are trying to have children that way. So we have to have that kind of alliance. And in some countries, including France, there are associations who are not just LGBT, like SVER. Is that the right way to say the acronym? So here, why don't you come here for a minute and give us 2-3 minutes about how you organize and what you're doing as an organization.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me back. It's really awesome to be here again. For our organization, it's true, we do need the alliance between heterosexual couples and gay couples, and the surrogates, by the way, because I noticed that they make a very big difference in how people look at the stories when they hear from the surrogates and find out that they are not being abused or taken advantage of, and that I am a surrogate, are actually happy about this, that we are very content to do this, that it is our choice, that we choose to do this ourselves. So all 3 parties are definitely needed to get the story out there. We noticed that the heterosexual couples paved the way towards more technological surrogacy, the IVF treatments, etc. And then we went around and tried to get the gay couples to also be included in being able to get that treatment. And the other way around, yes, straight couples are more reluctant to go out and tell their story of why they needed surrogacy. There's more of a taboo on that, and that's where the gay couples are much more outspoken, much more seen in the media, and they get the story out of why surrogacy is important, why we need to legislate this properly. And that is what we as an organization try to do. We try to influence politics and let them know that the legislation as it is right now in the Netherlands is, well, non-existent, and that we need something there. We also try to educate both intended parents and surrogates. And we have a network for surrogates to support each other, because all of us surrogates bump into the same things of people not understanding why you would give up your child. Why would you give your child away? Why are you doing this? Or they think it's very difficult. Wasn't it difficult the moment to give that baby to the intended parents, when each and every one of the surrogates I spoke to said, no, that was the biggest, most beautiful moment, to see the happiness that you wanted to create, to see that come into existence. So that was, that's something that we also did, was to connect the surrogates together. We have a sort of a buddy system. As soon as a new surrogate signs up to the Facebook group, we try to connect her to a more experienced surrogate so she can have a one-on-one conversation, if possible, in real life, just talking to someone who's been through it and who won't say, isn't that difficult? Are you sure? But who will say, I understand. I know where you're coming from because I've been there. So that's what we try to do as an organization.
So first, as a matter of programming, let me just say this is a little abbreviated. It didn't help that we, you can say this, and we'll talk, we'll open it to some conversations and questions in a few minutes. But we are going to have some conversations happening tomorrow as well. I know most of you are going to be focused on, those probably in the audience are going to be focused on more on the How to Become a Parent conference that we're going to be doing here. But on the 26th floor, we're going to have 2 sessions where some of us are already parents, are part of the associations, professionals in the field. And by the way, psychologists and lawyers are always among the most obvious allies, outspoken allies, as far as professional communities are. Of course, doctors and nurses, etc., are as well. But we're going to have a conversation tomorrow starting at 9:30 upstairs. Those of you who are not focused on the regular conference, please join us. We'll talk about messaging, about tactics. One of the tactics that happens sometimes is that they tell us, okay, surrogacy is okay, but only altruistic. And then a whole slew of issues come up because they define it as a surrogacy where the surrogates are not allowed to get restitution for all the sacrifices they make. And sometimes they say, okay, domestic surrogacy, but the moment we'll have domestic surrogacy under so many restrictions, we're not going to have international surrogacy anymore. So that's a risk you're facing in the Netherlands right now, that they're going to say, yes, the 5 surrogates a year that are willing to help gay people and otherwise and others to have children through surrogacy in the Netherlands, that'll be it. Everybody else now cannot go to abroad anymore. So there are all kinds of pitfalls in the legal strategies that are beyond what we were trying to cover today. And we invite those who are interested in that and are able to join us tomorrow and join the associations. There's associations in each one of your countries. There are some that are not represented here, for in Spain, Italy, of course, Portugal, and others that are all partners with us, and to the extent that they are interested in, and we're trying to encourage this dialogue and sharing of information and experiences to help better, more effective advocacy. So I'm going to bring Alan now to talk a little bit about why we think research is so fundamental in this, and how we've been using research or our knowledge and access to research in our advocacy, and what we expect moving forward.
Thank you very much. Again, I'm gonna introduce myself for those of you that came late. My name is Alan Campbell, and I am the Advocacy and Research Associate here at Men Having Babies. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how research ties into our mission as a nonprofit to continue to educate and to advocate for surrogacy in an ethical way. And so it's important to remember that Men Having Babies is a nonprofit education entity, and we use research to help influence what we do. It's interesting to note that a lot of the research that's being done about surrogacy, about gestational surrogacy, is happening in Europe, whereas a lot of the journeys that are happening are maybe happening outside of Europe. And so within that context, we know that there's a lot of research happening here in the continent, and we want to talk about that specifically today, and how that influences both our education and our advocacy efforts at Men Having Babies. So I think it's interesting, the takeaway from this brief discussion here is that you know that Men Having Babies is engaged in supporting research because it helps us with our mission to educate and to advocate. We want to talk about the research that's being done, so I'm going to give you just a brief state of the art of the research here regarding surrogacy that's happening in Europe. One of the things that's important and interesting to note is that the research is happening across disciplines. So I'm just going to note a couple of the different disciplines that are currently carrying out some very significant research projects, one that was already mentioned. In psychology, we have several researchers that are in Spain and Italy, and they're doing a longitudinal study about psychological development of children, of parents, and of gestational carriers. So they're researching on doing psychological development, researching the development of these parties to gestational carrier journeys over a long period of time. In social anthropology, we have some researchers in Madrid that are carrying out very interesting research about the points of view of women that become gestational carriers, their motivations and their experiences of both current and past gestational carriers. We have some research groups here in Europe that are very significant. We have the Cambridge Reproductive Sociology Research Group, and they carry out qualitative and ethnographic research about gay men creating families, about how they create families through both surrogacy and adoption, and they focus their research in the UK, but also based on journeys that happen in the US. We also have interesting research happening in the legal field. There's a research group called the Cambridge Family Legal Center, and there's also a new research group called the Nordic Center for Comparative and International Family Law, and they're doing research about how the legal aspects can affect our family building through gestational surrogacy. There's some interesting media studies that are being done about popular culture and the way that media and communication affects society's acceptance or not, or point of view about surrogacy journeys. We have very interesting multidisciplinary research that's happening about families in general. That's at the Cambridge Center for Family Research, and they research new families and families that were formed in all sorts of ways and how to best support those children, those parents, and other parties involved over long-term years. We have an interesting study that was mentioned already, and that was funded by 1.1 million euros, which is not insignificant for an academic research study. And that, again, is an 8-year study with one PI, primary investigator, and 2 PhD students. And they're going to be studying families that are going to form through gestational surrogacy, and they're going to start with the first meeting in the clinic. And then they're going to follow that through the 4th birthday of the child. And they're just going to do research about the situation and think about the counseling needs of those families and just the developmental and the psychological needs of those families and what comes up in the course of that long 8-year study. We also have some interesting research that's being done by some European researchers based on data that they collected in Israel. So we have this dichotomy of people that are researching here in Europe about things that are happening outside of the continent. I think it's interesting to note that breadth of the geography, where we've got these researchers all over the continent that are researching basically all over the world, and they're providing really interesting information to the state of the literature. And I think something else that's a great takeaway is that we've got a lot of young PhD candidate students that are involved in this research. I think for us that's really important because we can think about how there's this academic research interest by young nascent researchers that's going to help us over hopefully many years to continue to grow and learn more about what we can do right, what we can learn about the gaps in the research and how we can do better to provide ethical surrogacy. And again, I just want to reiterate that the main takeaway is we've got long history, over 3 decades worth of research that's been happening coming out of Europe. And that ties into our advocacy, as was mentioned before. We can use this data as evidence-based information to help us promote the acceptance of our way of forming families and to provide input to people that may not have the information so they can form more informed opinions about all aspects of this choice to form families. Lastly, I want you to remember that Men Having Babies supports research because it helps us with our goals. It helps us educate and it helps us advocate. We want to be sure that we're supporting the research community because we believe that adding to that body of research will help us do a better job of what we do, which is promoting ethical surrogacy. And last but not least, we are going to continue to look for ways to support research and researchers and to hopefully be a forum for those different people and groups to come together and share what they're doing, and again, help us inform what we do, and we can potentially help inform where the gaps in the knowledge are. So that's just a quick overview of the research that's happening, kind of the broad strokes of what's happening here in Europe regarding the academic research that's being done and how that's helping us and helping you, hopefully, potentially, be able to learn more about this process and to be able to learn more about how we're really doing scientific work to find out how we can do this and do it better. I'll leave you with this. For those of you that don't know, on the Men Having Babies website, we do have a research library. That's a great source of finding just information that's been published, it's been peer-reviewed, that is scientific. If you have questions about different topics, you can find it there, and we hope for that library to continue to be curated and to grow over time. So thank you for your time and for your attention about academic research, and we'll pivot back to how this all plays together.
And let me mention that the Advocacy and Research Forum is something we do now in most of our conferences. And sometimes we focus on, other aspects. We had one particularly in San Francisco, specifically looking at kind of the philosophical, the ethical side of social justice and surrogacy. We've had one in New York where we were lamenting and talking about the commercialization or the even increasing commercialization of surrogacy. It's not as if we think that everything that's happening and even what we typically talk about the United States and Canada as options that we feel we can support. We're not ever pretending that it's always as good as it could be. We have our ethical framework, we'll talk about it tomorrow, and we want to continue informing those policies and those positions we have, also based on research. But really, just recently, as I mentioned before, we've had opportunities, some of us to even meet virtually online as we were invited to speak before parliamentary committees, etc., to have people who are from the Association for the Abolition of Surrogacy and other kind of organizations talk very passionately about why they think what we're doing is violence against women without, citing a single study or a single logical, full logical argument as to why this is always violence against women. I'm willing to accept that there should be conditions that we all do as to how surrogacy, and we'll talk about it tomorrow, that the rights and the well-beings of everybody have to be factored in, and all the efforts, and there's a slew of, now standards even in the United States for surrogacy agencies, what they're doing and how, and even the terminology we use is very important. But to say that surrogacy is always categorically violence against women, that it's always categorically something that's detrimental for the gender roles of women, etc., those are gut feelings, positions that the only way for us to counter them is have well-articulated visions and schemes of how we think surrogacy could be done well, because the moment the argument becomes not is surrogacy good or bad, but how can surrogacy be practiced in an acceptably ethical way, it's a completely different argument. And then from that point on, if you also ask to see evidence when people state things that amount to stigmatization and to slander sometimes, if you demand to show research, and you can in turn point to research that shows that the children are not screwed up, the surrogates are not upset and somehow psychologically traumatized from that, and that medical risks are kept at the minimum, and everything else we're talking about, then once again, in addition to people being exposed to us and normalizing, our families, those are the winning advocacy foundations. So, we have just a few minutes and we did start a little late, so we might postpone our happy hour for just our welcome reception for just a few minutes. So, if people have brief comments or questions, I welcome you to raise your hands. We have 2 microphones here. I realize that you probably have a lot of questions that are going to be answered tomorrow at our day and a half of the rest of the conference. But to the extent that you think it's relevant to what we discussed today, we welcome comments or questions at this point. But not everybody together. It could be from professionals or from people from community organizations that are in the audience and think that we missed something. Do you guys have any additional comments you thought of in the last few minutes? Go ahead.
Yeah. I forget that what we're also doing is, because there's no law, it can take some time for parents, gay parents, to be legalized as parents. So what you see is that maternity or paternity leave is very difficult, and you have to fix something with holiday leave and sometimes leave without payment, etc. And what we do as an organization is we organize webinars for Dutch organizations to make room in their agreements, in their social agreements, for paternity leave, so that the children have the chance to get a bond with their parents, and the parents have a chance to have to create a bond with their children. So you see that we are doing this right now since the pandemic, actually, that we transitioned to online webinars. And you see that a lot of organizations like PricewaterhouseCoopers or Volvo Group or Vattenfall are already turning their heads around for their employees to create room to have a connection with the children. So I think that's a very good, a very social way of saying to your employees, you are equal and we are taking care of you. And you see actually on the employee side that it has actually a benefit, because employees are very more loyal to their organizations. So I think that's a very good way of also saying to the politics, look, if you are not going to fix it, we are going to do it ourselves, creating a less bigger gap between the actual situation and the non-legal situation where it is right now. So I think that's a very good progress that we've...
and that's the kind of alliances that Florent was also talking about with businesses. And let me say that
exactly.
The reality is that many of those businesses now, especially the larger employers, are multinational organizations. And this is why we want to be able to support each other in our efforts. And we've had, in the United States, our issues are a little different. So I'll give you a hint about that. But we certainly do have, in general, let me say, our advocacy goals have to do with, first of all, how we understand and further want to understand what constitute an ethical surrogacy practice. The second one is removing obstacles or access, legal access to surrogacy. And that's the stage where most of Europeans are, that there is no legal access to surrogacy. And then the last one that doesn't always necessarily come third, but it could be done in parallel, is removing financial barriers for surrogacy parenting for prospective parents throughout the United States and in Europe. And if surrogacy is not legal here and you have to undergo surrogacy, you have to go to the United States or Canada for surrogacy, for instance, then even if we have insurance coverage for surrogacy in the United States, it's not going to help you. But if your employer understands that they want to support and retain their workers and therefore provide them fertility benefits, for instance, you need to be able to articulate why, if heterosexual people are getting fertility benefits because they're considered to be suffering from a disease or a condition, that your situation where you're suffering from infertility that is based on your status is equal. And that is work we call fertility equality. And we're advocating and spreading a new definition of infertility that is a condition, a disease, but also a status. And that is, we're doing it in alliance with an infertility patient advocacy group in the United States, which could be allies in turn in your countries, and with legal associations, mental health professional associations, an association of, or that's currently a target of advocacy, association of professionals in the assisted technology field. So spreading the word that our suffering, our situation that we cannot have a child without the assistance of others is not in any way of a lesser status than the people who are suffering from a medical or conventionally medical recognized condition. And that could then help what you're fortunate to be partially further in the Netherlands, but this is something, once again, we're trying to do also through the private sector. So, and some associations, some corporations, we've had IPs. You probably don't know that you're IPs. You're intended parents. You'll learn about it tomorrow. That's how you're being referred in the professional arena. So we have IPs from sometimes approach us saying, I'm trying to advocate for this in my company. And we had one particular who had a European company, and they said, they're not going to give us those benefits because they think surrogacy is unethical. So that's why we need to be able to advocate and say, if it is done in a certain way, maybe in agencies that are adhering to standards, and in a country where there are protections for the surrogates, et cetera, then in those conditions, why not broaden your support? And I will end with this, what I said before, which is a tricky thing, but it is the reality of our particular group here, that it's still a cross of LGBT parenting and surrogacy. Those two issues are very hard to extract from one another. And some of the research is actually about both of those things at once, or one aspect or the other. But in reality, we're all just people, and all those issues manifest in our being. And the fact that us, gay men, as a category, have the most obstacles, the biggest challenge to become parents, is indeed also a reason why we need to demand that if somebody's talking or advocating against surrogacy, that they absolutely make sure that their position is very well founded in research and other arguments, because otherwise they're also hurting us as gay men. So that cross raises the bar of how much scrutiny and how much there is a duty for them to prove, because it's not a crimeless, it's not a victimless crime. If they're talking against surrogacy, we're going to be affected. If they're talking against surrogacy, our children are going to be stigmatized. So they can't just say those things thinking that it's just a general discussion, a philosophical discussion. It's a discussion about real people. And we, as a category, are going to be mostly affected, gay men, if countries decide that surrogacy is always condemnable. Go ahead, Jens.
We talked about the research with the parents and the IPs actually the parents and the surrogates. I remember last year we also talked about now that our children actually get older, and you talked about yours, and mine is 14. So the children of both gay parents but also surrogacy children, they become, as they grow older, they become a really interesting research group. So what I'm trying to say is that this is not the end of it yet, because it's still a relatively young field of research, and but I think the focus will develop. There will shift into this towards this group, and we're also working with research organizations that are trying to make that the focus, and also the media coverage is shifting also a little bit, like not telling the story about a gay couple wanting to have kids. This story has been told many times now, but what about the children born into that family as they reach puberty, and what happens and so forth. So there's a lot of there's a lot more to come, actually, more stories to tell.
And we do have panels in the United States, we call them teen panels, where we have children born through surrogacy who are old enough to testify, anecdotally, obviously, because the research is important for systematic understanding, but, and we also have occasionally children of surrogates, because we consider all these perspectives to be relevant, the perspective of the children and the perspective of the surrogate's entire family. And more about that at the Mindful Look at Surrogacy tomorrow. So I'm going to, so first of all, thank you so much for your attention. As I mentioned, there will be opportunities to discuss about this some more tomorrow. Those of you who are here next year or around and can join us next year, maybe already as parents or well on your way to becoming parents and want to now, once they figured out their own path, get involved, please seek out the associations. They'll have tables outside throughout the weekend. And I'm going to hand it back to Lisa now to give us a few programming notes about this evening and tomorrow. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. We are just getting started on a very fun, informational, and full weekend. So we're looking forward to seeing everyone back here again tomorrow. If you are coming as an intended parent, as now you know that lingo as well, you will come right to this first floor. You don't need to test again, but you do need to check in. So we will have registration set up all in that back foyer where we're about to go have some drinks. You'll be able to check in by country. You'll get a permanent name tag and a conference booklet and material for the day. So come back here tomorrow morning for that. If you're coming for the continuation of our Advocacy and Research Forum, you can go directly up to the 26th floor, and we will see you up there tomorrow morning starting at 9:30 for 2 more sessions, talking more workshop style and continuing on that subject. But for tonight, we're getting ready to be a little bit more social, chat with everybody. We will have drinks and some hors d'oeuvres directly outside either door here in the foyer, and that is in thanks to our wonderful sponsors for our welcome reception tonight. We have Tree of Life and New Gen Families. So first I want to welcome Dr. Janovic up to say a few words, followed by Damien from New Gen Families.
Well, thank you very much for coming today. Tree of Life Center is very happy to sponsor the event today. We are IVF clinic in Los Angeles, and we're very happy that we don't have to necessarily talk about all these obstacles. When you come, we talk more about what is the best chance for you to become pregnant, who's the best surrogate, who's the best egg donor. And we're kind of beyond this point that were mentioned, all these points that were mentioned before. Is it possible? Is it not really possible? We take it as granted. I think some people taking too much as granted. Sometimes I do have to tell them it's different. I myself, I practice in Europe. I practice in German IVF clinics, so I know exactly how it is, and I would be in jail probably for all the things I'm doing in LA every single day in basically Germany. But we're happy to sponsor good info coming out of this. It's actually rare to find good info about what you're looking for. You might get fragments from different places, different clinics, but I think that the whole program is very good, very well structured, and as I said, we are very happy to be part of it. So please enjoy the drinks after this. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Damien Chambers. I'm the CEO of New Gen Families. We are a modern, friendly and inclusive surrogacy agency based in Las Vegas, Nevada. First of all, I just want to thank the incredible team of Men Having Babies. Year in and year out, they are putting on these incredible events, and I think it's just such a privilege and an honor for us rainbow families and intended parents to have these events. I'm going to be talking tomorrow at 4 p.m, so I encourage you all to have a good night tonight. And so tomorrow at 4 p.m, please come and see me, enjoy, have a drink, have some hors d'oeuvres, and thanks once again to the Men Having Babies team.
great. Thank you so much for you guys coming. Thank you so much for our wonderful panelists here tonight. And I hope you guys have the opportunity to not only engage with them, speak with them here this weekend, but continue on in seeing how you can help with the wonderful work that they are doing. But now let's go have some drinks and cocktails with, or I shouldn't say cocktails, wine and beer, thanks to New Gen and Tree of Life. Thank you, everyone.